Hello, everyone.
Hello again.
This is brighter than I thought.
Oh, it is.
Fantastic. Number one, it's my first time on stage at Hedna, so bear with me, but I've got you, Chris, on my side, so it's going to be fine. It's also a home game for me, so I'm from Munich originally, so it's all the more special. So thank you for having me, Chris. Thank you for having me, Hedna, and it's very exciting to not talk about rate gain today, but to talk about the State of Distribution Report.
Absolutely.
Instead, the State of Distribution Report, let's start with what. What is the State of Distribution Report? The State of Distribution Report has been launched. We've launched a survey in the beginning of January, which has been filled out by around 140 hotels for this first iteration of the report. The report is ongoing. Hoteliers can still sign on and fill out the survey to give us more information, more data points. But we're very excited to present the first iteration today.
That's great.
Chris will give us the perspective both from Hedna and from the hotel side today. So I'll be pinging a few questions of Chris during this session to get a hotelier's first-hand perspective on the findings that we had. When we go into the why have we launched the State of Distribution Report, I think it's very important to mention that this report is about everybody here in this room. It's about the hoteliers, but it's also about us technology providers. It's about the marketplaces, and it goes far beyond this room because in the end, we're trying to get data points that help us improve the industry and tackle challenges of the industry head on. So.
No, right. I mean, it's, you know, when Hedna was approached about helping out with this and being able to survey just hoteliers, we thought it was a great opportunity. I mean, you know, we're kind of sick and tired of hearing post-COVID, but there was still, you know, that understanding that we needed to really understand where distribution has changed after that. And so it was really a good opportunity to garner and curate this information to put it together to understand from large hotel organizations, mid-size and smaller independents, how either their distribution teams have changed or have come together with other commercial teams, and then as well looking at you know, technology spend and where hotel companies are looking at putting their capital and putting their money.
Yeah. And generally speaking, when we're looking at the report and some of the results of the first iteration, and I keep on saying first iteration because it is exactly that, we're looking at the team side of things. How has the team changed over the last years, especially and post-COVID? How does that affect training, nurturing talent, and reskilling, upskilling? And we also need to determine how and why hotels are investing in technology nowadays. For us as technology partners, that's very important to understand. Great. Before we jump into the nitty-gritties of the report, some first trends that we found interesting to share, for example, when we're looking at the team, is that the teams become more and more intertwined and have a lot of overlap within their functions. Before we had a marketing team, we had a sales team, we had a revenue team and a distribution team. And the results in the report stated very clearly that these roles are now very much intertwined, and I think from a hotel perspective, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it came down to was, you know, as you looked at creating efficiencies within your own hotel organization, within your teams, there needed to be, and there still needs to be, but what you started to see was collaboration and where distribution actually, I think it was understood, if not understood prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic and post, it was understood that distribution more and more needs to be at the table for many of these discussions that take place. And I think that collaboration then started to shift the mindset, you know, from even distribution as a discipline as a whole to teams, to individuals that were on distribution teams, to try to get really just more well-rounded training to understand the effect of, you know, A plus B plus C, rather than just hitting a button to check a box on a process. This is where in my opinion, I think this is where it began to grow, and this is where we're still seeing a trend.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense looking at another trend we're lining out here on this slide, the team approach to return on investment with the emphasis on team. So it's all the different teams and departments working into one bigger team on return on investment. Fantastic. And some new skills that we're seeing as important are data interpretation, modeling and reporting, and also working very clearly on commercial strategies across the board. Good. Jumping into the demographics of this report, I think it's very important to set that context a bit more. Who has actually answered to it is a good question to ask. Generally speaking, when we're looking at regions, we have a high participation across the board with the biggest set of answers coming from Asia Pacific, but we've got a very even split across the board between North America, Europe, Middle East, and Latin America as well. When we're talking about the roles that have responded to the report, we've got a good mix of revenue managers, distribution, and marketing professionals. And on the hotel size side, and I think that's very important as well, we've got also a good mix of global chains, regional chains, and individual hoteliers. And I think that's really the essence of this report. It gives us a good view of the entire landscape and not just of one sub-segment, and that gives us a chance to compare where there are commonalities on challenges or on activities, and also where there are big differences. And that helps us then refine our approach individually.
Yeah, and I think as we go into some of the results that we're going to share today, there are items that, when you read through it and read through the report and some of the survey results, there were thoughts in your mind that you kind of figured how it was going to be your thought, but when you start to read through it, it helps enhance and just solidify that yes, this is why having conversations with one set of hotels can really vary on how that same conversation is going to have with other size organizations and how they're handling things. Yeah.
Fantastic. Should we jump into some of the stats that we found? The first one is actually about reporting and analytics. So generally speaking, one core piece of information that we got from the report is about the hotel investments. And most hotels were trying to solve the problem of reporting and analytics with their technology investments and purchases. So 71% of the large chains answered that, 62% of the mid-sized chains, and 47% of the individual hotels. So by far, that was the biggest purchase that was done across the board.
Yeah.
How does that resonate from the hotel perspective, Chris?
Well, it makes sense. And when you look at the numbers that we're seeing there, large hotel chains, there's a need to invest in that just by the sheer data and the multiple different systems that you can get data from and analytics from. To be able really to provide hotels that are within your organization the ability to understand the data that you have from, if you end up with really 10 different data systems and analytics, and this is not even, then you get into guest data, which becomes a beast, then, that's where you end up investing. And I think as you go down and you start to look at mid-size and then independent, I think for independent hotels, there's spend there, but it's almost at the same time, I think for independent hotels, there's also the need to understand what the data is and where to get it. So I think while we're looking at numbers on spend on that, I think even what it's spent on within reporting and analytics can vary between the different size.
Looking at the next two slides, and I wanted to get your context on that as well. So a very important and for me somewhat surprising number, because I haven't worked in hotels for over 10 years now, is actually that hotels on average spend up to 2 days a week on reporting, which is a mind-boggling number in my head.
It still happens. Ooh,
and then if we're looking at the next slide here as well, when we're looking at the mid-sized hotel chains and independent hotels, there are still a whopping 37% on both of those segments who manually combine sources from different data sets.
Yeah.
So how does that resonate on the hotel side for you, Chris?
Well, I mean, it's again, it comes down to, the need, and this is the reason why, we have data and analytics presented and then speak and offer the opportunity for hotel companies to ask questions and understand why it's, a lot of times when you get data from so many different systems, different data sets, it very often the quickest way to be able to roll that out to the hotels or even to be able to analyze it is to do what you know.
Yeah.
And combine it in Excel. You find someone on your team that can write macros for breakfast, and then you just go, there you go. But I think it again highlights the need for hotels to even further invest to ensure that they're providing data to all their business units.
And there is a silver lining. 17 and 15% are saying that they have a fully automated reporting solution. So apparently the market has solved for it already, and maybe the word just has to spread further. Great. Jumping through to the biggest factor of deciding for a solution when doing a technology purchase. Here we had some very different answers in the different segments. So when we're looking at the large chains, the biggest deciding factor was actually the ease of implementation. Mid-sized chains said scalability and stability, and then a clear return on investment was the biggest one for the individual hoteliers. Working at a big chain, how does it resonate?
Well, and I'll tell you, when you read it, it makes sense. And this, while ease of implementation for a large chain was top, I can tell you right under that, then you get into ROI and scalability. But I think the reason you see ease of implementation is with our larger hotel organizations. When we say large, I mean, 4,500 hotels large, if not even larger. So trying to imagine bringing on a new technology, while scalability is huge, ROI is huge, you have to keep in mind it's the ease of implementation. Especially after COVID, you have hotels that business had been disrupted already enough, and how do you go back then out to a brand and say, okay, well, we're going to introduce a technology, and you're going to be kind of floating for a month or a week, and that doesn't fly. So there's a lot of background work and education done prior. And then, when you go down the scale, it's for independent hotels, maybe they don't have as much capital. So they really need to know that what they're about to invest in,
of course,
is going to be what they need, and they're going to see results.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic, good. Switching through the gears, next topic is manual efforts, which is always fun.
Still too much.
So still too much. I think everybody agreed in this report, and most probably in this room too. But an interesting split when we're looking across the board. No difference on the top answer here for mid-sized and independent hotels, who both said manually monitoring and updating content is still the top manual activity, versus manually managing rate parity on the hotel chain, large hotel chain side. I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I want to give context to those numbers as well. So it's basically 83% of the respondents, for example, at the mid-sized hotel chain said that is a manual activity, not the top manual activity. We get to the top activities later. Switching to that, actually, where are the hotels investing most of their manual effort at the moment? Again, on the large hotel chain side, we're saying monitoring rate parity, whilst it's optimizing paid campaigns and identifying new demand channels on the mid-sized and on the independent side, respectively. A very common theme there on the large hotel chain side is rate parity still the be-all there, yeah?
I mean, and I heard Nick allude to it earlier for Lighthouse, and there's within our organization too, we have hotels that we have a couple different rate parity type applications that can be used, and they're great for identifying where those are. I mean, that's a piece of the manual side of it that is we're beginning to move away from.
Yeah.
But then there's the other aspect of it is even further digging into how and why. So then you have, distribution teams and experts that will literally manually kind of need to go into why it's happening and why we're seeing those scores. But yeah, it's still there for sure. I mean, and then, yeah, it's interesting monitoring rate parity. And on the previous slide, because it crossed my mind, you're looking at, as a industry and as still the manual update of content. I mean, it makes you wonder if Hedna should do something about that. We've only tried for 10 years, but no, but it's interesting that's still there, and it's a common theme. But yeah.
Actually, going to the next slide, it goes directly in that direction. We've also asked, where would you like to reduce your effort significantly? Keeping in mind that most effort is spent with large chains, for example, on manually monitoring parity. They would like to reduce the maintaining content, images, and descriptions
100%.
Most. Why is there this discrepancy? You could say it's a contradiction. I don't think so. What would you say?
What contradiction of?
Well, the contradiction between saying, okay, most effort is spent here, but we would like to reduce effort most on this side.
I think at the same time, it's because we've recognized it for a decade, if not more, that it needs to be done, and it's a resource. I don't know. I don't want to use. I'm going to say it. Like, it's a resource suck to get the amount of manual time to work through things that really in this day and age you shouldn't have to. It should be more automated, and there are solutions within our organizations that are coming into play internally for 100%, and we have providers and other tech companies that are beginning to really dive into this and help hotels be able to curate and distribute content. But it still maintains that high level of we want to move past it so we can spend time on other aspects.
Well, it's also, I think, a matter of what is it worth to spend manual effort on versus where do you think it's just a drag on resources, right? So parity, I imagine, is much more worth it in this sense.
Well, 100%.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you need to change the description or an image, while yes, incredibly important, a rate or an offer, a paid campaign, something like that is going to take precedent.
Yeah.
It's kind of, that's where the money is.
Okay.
Right?
And managing rate parity and creating an understanding of reports brings us nicely back full circle to reporting and analytics again, and then rate parity is very top of mind for the mid-sized chains as well as something to reduce here as well. So there's various solution that maybe should be used more or should be optimized in order to really offer that solution. Great. Moving through the gears, the last segment we're looking at is sourcing the right talent. And a very clear and unsurprising statement here, sourcing the right talent is the highest priority for all. So that's respective for 71%, 56% and 58% across the board between large, mid, and independent segments.
Yeah. Even when I look at this, when I looked at the numbers that came through in the survey, it rang true even for myself. Post-pandemic, I mean, there was the need to rehire, to put distribution teams back together again. And, it's finding that talent and that skill set. What it really highlighted is that it doesn't exist outside of kind of the teams you've had that were in place for 15 or 20 years. And when you go to rehire into it, then you realize, okay, this is going to turn into training for 6 months to a year. And some of the teams that I've put together over the years, one of the things I've always explained is, you're not going to get it all within a month. I mean, it'll be a year, you're still going to be learning. And I think that also leads to, brought us back to HEDNA. How do we now, take the knowledge and the mindset, the experience that we have within HEDNA and really start to push it through partnerships with like NYU and through things like this. And because there's a need, huge need.
Yeah. I've got a slide here with a lot of words and we're running out of time. So key items I want to take away from here, again, that's hiring the right talent, deliver strong ROI has been stated across the board, and investing technology trainings, increase productivity. But generally speaking, going to the last slide, please all get your phones out and scan this QR code. This is my call to action. You can, number one, sign up to receive the full report, because today we just looked at the tip of the iceberg.
Yep.
The report is much more extensive. And also on the same page, you are able to fill out the survey yourself. As I mentioned before, it's a living and breathing report. This is the first iteration of the report we're presenting today, or teasing today.
And I believe we're quite close to seeing the first iteration in publish, actually. Quite short, yeah. Was looking at it draft this past week, so excited to have it out.
So if you sign up via this QR code, you can sign up to get the first report in full with much more details than what we've looked at today.
Fantastic.
And that's us today. Thank you, Chris.
Oh, thank you, Fritz. Thank you all.